Hello, and welcome to Front Porch Radio. My name is Julie Wilder, and today is Indigenous Peoples Day. And did you know, a lot of people don't know this because you're not taught this in history classes, that the United States democracy is based on the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. You might remember them as the Iroquois, and that their version of the Supreme Court was all women. I've posted a short video explaining how they directly influenced the formation of our democracy on our Facebook page at Front Porch Radio. So, if you want to get informed, that's where you can get some more information on that. But you know what? We just had a hurricane come through after Helene came through just before that. And so I'm just wondering, how are you handling? Are you struggling with concerns about the climate crisis? There's a lot of news that this is, of course, a human-created problem with our lack of climate controlling industries. So that is big on my mind. And of course, during the hurricane, all of these posts were going around about Project 2025 wanting to disband FEMA. Of course, I know it's been a rough one, but did you forget that there's an election in a couple of weeks? That you need to bone up on some of the ballot measures? Yeah, that's happening too. I've been wondering if Florida can possibly swing blue. And so today, I call in the expert. We're going to catch up with a trailblazing politician, Florida District 47 Representative Dr. Anna Eskamani, about post-hurricane recovery efforts, important election issues, and her unique approach to grassroots politics in the era of breaking glass ceilings and the MAGA backlash. So, give you a little bit of an intro. If you're not familiar, Representative Dr. Anna Eskamani is a trailblazing and game-changing politician and my personal representative. She's an Orlando native and daughter to working-class immigrants, and she first appeared on Front Porch Radio as Senior Director of Planned Parenthood of Southwest and Central Florida, fighting for bodily autonomy. She made history as the first Iranian-American elected to any public office in Florida in 2018 and won her re-election by an overwhelming majority in 2020 and 2022. And I think we're about to do it again. She's been a tireless champion for critical issues like housing affordability, tax breaks for working families, and environmental protection, equality for all, and funding for public schools, human trafficking, and sexual assault prevention, and support of arts and cultural funding. She also recently completed her PhD in public administration just a couple months ago from UCF. So I am proud to introduce her as Representative Anna Eskamani. Welcome to Front Porch Radio.
Thank you. It's great to be back, and it's great to have you back in this role.
I'm super excited about that for sure.
And then when I was listening to that really sweet bio, just thinking about my days at Planned Parenthood, and not only am I just so grateful for the years that I worked there, but of course, my God, we just have so much to fight for.
And honestly, I'm so glad that you're in there because I have been looking at what's going on just politically as well with the climate, and I'm like, is it time to bail in Florida?
Never.
Yeah. And so thank you for being in there and doing what you can. Why don't you give us a little bit of an update? I know you've been out cleaning with your crew and helping out with Hurricane Milton aftermath. Tell us what's going on. Give us like the on-the-ground update.
Oh, for sure. Well, Orlando and Central Florida, for the most part, was very lucky during Hurricane Milton and even Hurricane Helene as well. We have dodged major impact in both cases. Of course, we still had tens of thousands of constituents who did not have power this past weekend. Folks who experienced massive flooding, including small businesses. I actually stopped by the Hammered Lamb and Ivanhoe. All those businesses had experienced flooding.
Right.
So we did have a huge need, as you mentioned, for just debris pickup, debris support. So our team was out on the ground helping our seniors and those with disabilities clean up their yards and get into a place of more stability. I've been working on power restoration all weekend.
Oh my goodness.
But on the other side of it today, I do think that for District 42, overwhelmingly back online, back with power, and we're here to help others. And so doing what we can to support our fellow Floridians more directly impacted on the coast. And interesting enough, the Sunday before Milton came, I actually rented a U-Haul and drove up to the Panhandle with one of my friends, Ricardo, because we had hosted a hurricane relief drive for Helene in our office. So we were driving up to Perry, Florida and Greenville, Florida to drop off hurricane relief drive items. And then we rushed back to Orlando because of Milton. So you mentioned just the climate crisis and how these storms are becoming more and more frequent and intense. And there's no doubt in my mind about that.
I was looking at the South Florida and, I was on that tornado map. I was like on the very north end of the the tornado warnings. And I'm like, F3s in Florida?
Crazy.
I'm like, no, I don't want to be in Oklahoma.
Yes, it's not. It's just so unprecedented. And I have actually friends of friends who were impacted by the tornado in Cocoa Beach. And seeing the images from South Florida. And I had so many folks on my social media who were like, is this for Milton? Like, is this an old video? And I was like, no, this is real. Like, this just happened. And the fact that folks can even process it, I think speaks to how unusual it is.
Yeah. I think there, and of course, a lot of us were glued to social media. I know that I finally got the news station and put that on my TV because I hadn't had a news station in a long time. But I was looking at most of my media was from social media and seeing all of these just crazy like conspiracy theories about the weather being controlled.
Oh my God.
And, and I'm like, wow, how convenient. That's what my thought was like, oh, climate change denying people are now claiming that
you actually can't control the weather. I know.
A major hurricane too.
But isn't that such a common pattern of projection? Like, it's just so ironic to me. Like, every time I, face these types of debates where maybe, for example, they accuse, public schools of indoctrinating youth, which is not happening. And yet they're the ones that want to put into place, restrictions on books and conservative orthodoxy into the classroom. And it's like, who's indoctrinating who right now? It's just always like this constant cycle of projection.
I know sometimes it's just fruitless to have arguments online, but there's a few friends of mine that I'm starting to see that kind of commentary with, and I'm like, I can't let this go unremarked, because they've got all these list of patents for weather control. And I said, yes, it might be plausible. People are Twister just came out, and they're like trying to find ways to like actually help break the wind shear or whatever. I don't, know. And so maybe there are people like that are trying to figure out some things with some patents to help with certain things, but to go the extra leap and mile to say that they're forming and steering a major hurricane, that's just completely bonkers.
Yeah, it's so sad. But to your point, I do think it's really important that to what capacity we have to not ignore people who make these comments, and especially if we know them, and to talk to them, because unfortunately the path towards radicalization is clear with these dark holes on the internet for a lot of folks. And so you really have to be that friend, that family member to kind of talk to that person and get them into a place of understanding the science behind weather patterns. And at the end of the day, we do know these storms are becoming more intense, and it's due to warmer climate.
Right. Warm water.
Exactly.
Warm water. That's what does it.
It's that simple. And what breaks my heart is it's the communities who contribute the least to climate change are often most negatively impacted. And of course, their path to recovery is just so much more narrow compared to others. It's much harder to build back when you already have limited resources, when you don't have insurance coverage, when you are living in a working class neighborhood. In parts of the Panhandle that I visited about 2 weeks ago in Perry and in Greenville, these were already very impoverished communities. And the last thing they need is a major hurricane.
Right.
And yet it just continuously happens almost every hurricane season now.
Yeah, it is incredible. And, one of the things as a homeowner, I'm like, okay, are the insurance rates going to go back up? From what a lot of people don't understand that, politicians also have limits on what they can affect, right? So what are some things that like representatives and senators can affect, and would you like to be seeing that can help with some of these concerns around hurricanes and climate change?
For sure. Well, you mentioned property insurance. On the property insurance front, there's very clear policy proposals that have actually been provided in a bipartisan fashion. Last legislative session, House Bill 1213 was filed by Republicans and Democrats. Unfortunately, leadership never gave us a hearing. They gave us a workshop that basically would create a public option for universal wind coverage, because the reality is that as we see climate change continue to impact us, and Florida as a peninsula just sticking into Hurricane Alley, there's no way we can't secure our residents with some sort of coverage. And Texas, a red state, California, a blue state, already do this. They have something called the fair coverage. And so it basically is that safety net for families that can't afford an option from the private insurer. Now, the goal of providing this is that it's just for windstorm coverage, or maybe it's for windstorm and flood, right? The risk that is most expensive that companies don't want to cover, but then allow the private sector to provide all options, but to really ensure that there's no competitors when it comes to fire and theft and other types of insurance for homes.
Right.
But if we don't provide this public option, I'm worried that the rates will continue to climb up. People are going to continue to be kicked off their coverage and decide to go uncovered if they have the ability to do that because they don't have a mortgage. And for those who can't, they just can't become homeowners, and that's un-American in our efforts to make sure that every person has an opportunity to become a homeowner.
Yeah, and I mean, I luckily I am a homeowner, but I'm also a single mom, and so personally, just being squeezed by those insurance prices, but then also as a small business owner, watching how this economic squeeze is impacting small businesses.
For sure,
it just has so far-reaching effects. So
it's a ripple effect, and at the end of the day, if we don't manage the risk. I mean, here's the irony is that the insurance industry, they're calculating the risk and they see it as very expensive, which is why they don't want to provide coverage. Yeah, the legislature ignores that data.
Right.
And we're not investing in mitigation. We're not investing in hardening. The governor was actually recently asked, what can we do to ensure that we're not building in parts of the state that are not sustainable?
Right.
And he basically said, we're not going to do anything. You have the right to build wherever you want as a property owner. And, my thought is, well, then are we going to stop subsidizing people who do that? Are we going to stop subsidizing developers?
Instead of giving them incentives.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, okay, well, if you're going to build in a part of the state that has been, like, that's not only going to be hit by a hurricane again, but candidly, sea level is rising. So,
right.
I mean, many parts of our state are just not going to be habitable in decades to come. I mean,
right.
The data tells us that. And so if we're going to allow developers to rebuild in those areas, then why should we continue to subsidize the insurance costs for them? They should swallow up the risk. And when we continue to enable this type of development, it's bad for the environment. It's bad for our ability to also just manage storm surges. I mean, we decimated so many of our mangroves across the coast of Florida, and mangroves are designed to prevent erosion and to impact to lessen the impact of a storm surge.
Right. Yeah. The Florida ecosystem has been in a slow hostile takeover, and sometimes rapid hostile takeover by land developers, and it's like plugging up the lungs of the state. Like that's how the ecosystem is supposed to work in Florida to absorb that. So I'm so glad that you're in place and on top of all of those issues, because those are some really deep concerns as a resident, for sure. So I kind of want to take a little bit of a turn and talk a little bit about just your grassroots approach to progressive, like when I think of you, I think about like, man, Anna is really giving politicians a good name. I always used to think, when I think about politicians, and it's been really, I mean, the glass ceilings have been breaking and breaking and breaking. And it has been so refreshing to see just your approach. I know I've personally come into your office to talk about the banned book issue. Right. I've come into your I was like, what else can my representative do for me? But like, when I was trying to figure out, I got locked out of Facebook, and somebody was like, if you connect with your district rep, they can get to you a Facebook liaison. And I was like, what? And literally your office helped me get into back into my Facebook account that I'd been locked out of for 3 months.
Wow.
So what else can you do?
Wow.
What other magical powers do you have? and tell us a little bit about your unique approach, like what sets you apart as a politician that some people may not recognize or understand if they're not following you. Because I follow you and I'm like, oh, go girl, go girl, go girl.
I mean, a part of it is just being over communicated and over accessible, right? I mean, I am my biggest critic. And so I look back to growing up in Orlando as a working class kid, and my family had no idea who our representative was. No idea. And yet we struggled a lot. We struggled financially. We struggled with my mom's cancer, and unfortunately she passed away when I was 13. And then we struggled economically even more, going from a dual income household to single income. And I look back to my own childhood and I think like, wow, who was fighting for my family? And even if someone was, I had no idea. And that's a problem. You know, we not only need to help ensure that everyday people have access to government and understand that government can work for you when you elect the right people, then you have to hold those elected officials to a high standard and know the potential of that standard. Because to your point, I think a lot of folks just assume that politicians are untrustworthy, that politicians are useless, that they get cushy salaries.
It's the bias for sure, and not without merit.
Exactly. And I have to tell you, I feel like when I first got elected and to this day, like I inherited that baggage. Like just because of the title I have, it comes with baggage of people's preconceived notions of what a politician is. So there's this constant effort by me and my team, our team, to redefine that, to always practice a no wrong door policy. So we have folks who contact our office all the time. And if we can't say yes, we try to find an organization or another office that can say yes to help you with your challenge or issue. We get creative with mutual aid and community resources. And we go the extra mile. You know, our slogan is working for you, fighting for us. And so I do what I can to deliver on those constituent services while fighting for the policies to make it easier to deliver those services. Social media is a big part of that too. We're very active on multiple platforms. And I use social media as a tool to get information out to folks so that you can share it, because I do believe in collaborative governance. I don't believe in a top-down hierarchical structure. I think that a good government is not a vertical org chart, but a horizontal one where, yes, there's decision makers, there's people that have, you know, the authority to do certain things. But at the end of the day, everyone is a leader. We all play a role in our collective success, and we can create that ecosystem where you can actually plug in and be a part of it. And social media helps us democratize, I think, some of these institutions that are more accessible. But I would be lying if I said it wasn't hard. I mean, my salary is only $28,000.
Seriously?
Yeah, it's a part-time job. So I have a full-time job on top of this.
That does not even give you like the ability to have an alarm system on your house.
Oh, nothing. Nothing. I mean,
you might need, you know.
Oh, totally. I mean, girl, tell me about it. Like, I mean, it's I think unexpected. I think a lot of folks see how accessible we are and how, you know, I try to be everywhere all the time, and they think it's, you know, equitable to a member of Congress, but no, that is the salary of a state representative.
That's not even a living wage.
No, it's not. And a part of it is, you know, Florida's never evolved from the, you know, origin of our state. I mean, we weren't always 22 million strong, right? Mm-hmm. So part of the challenge is that we haven't updated the state constitution to reflect the current population of the state. So our state legislature and arguably state agencies are still operating as if Florida is a much smaller state than what it is. My district, District 42, every district in legislature for the House has 188,000 people and only 2 full-time staff. I actually have a third part-time staffer that I use our office account money. You know, we can use those resources for rent and things like that, but I try to keep my office expenses down so I can bring on another staff member, because you just can't manage a district that size with just 2 people, let alone 3 people. I mean, the size of our House district is the size of some congressional seats in other states.
Right.
And they have a staff of 12 to 15.
And so, I mean, I'm just spitballing here, but that seems like it would lead, I know not you, but, you know, some politicians to be taking personal money, you know, in exchange for favors. Like that's just a system that is
100%. No, I think that's it feels counterintuitive sometimes, right? Because the notion of paying a lawmaker more is definitely controversial. But the reason why it's worthy of debate is what you just said, is that if you're not paying just a wage someone can live off on, right? Nothing grandiose, but it not only closes out really good candidates who are never going to run for office because they just can't afford to run for office.
That's why I haven't done it. Mm-hmm. I'm a single mom, and I'm like, how am I supposed to run for office and have a whole full campaign,
right,
and like divvy up my time like that?
Yeah.
Like it seems impossible.
Well, we didn't even talk about how expensive campaigns are, right?
Yeah.
But campaigns are expensive, and you know, some folks will ask me like, "Oh, can that money help like pay for your bills?" And I'm like, "No, like that's illegal. Like everything you raise has to go straight to the campaign. You don't take a salary from your. I mean, if politicians who are caught doing that often are faced with severe consequences, and so you have to maintain another source of income unless you come from wealth. That's the reality of it.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's definitely a conversation I think that's worth having.
Yeah, and it makes it just a setup so that wealthy people of privilege are the ones that, have, I have a little bit of a thing with the words power and authority. Like, I like to tell people, you talked about authority just a second ago, and authority is simply authorship.
Right.
And if, your discussion about a horizontal type of engagement, we can author our own story, and it just takes being engaged. And one of the things that I love about your social media presence is you're often on there explaining how the legislation process works, which, I mean, am I 46? I think I'm 46. It's been a while since I learned how the government functioned,
Right. But every state legislature's kind of different too, and it's definitely different from Congress. Like, we are only in Tallahassee for 3 to 4 months of the year. That's what our session is, and we only get 7 bill slots every year. Like, I don't have unlimited bills to file, and so I do think that educational piece, it not only is it important at a personal level for me, but it's empowering and I think it helps you want to engage more with government when you understand it, because then you have more control and more authorship. And so I take a lot of pride in kind of breaking that down for folks and trying to make it more accessible. And there were people that did that for me too. So I feel like I'm also kind of passing it down, right, and giving forward, because at the end of the day, I'm only going to be a representative, God willing, for 2 more years. And I got to make sure that the community that we're serving is also building efficacy to not only elect the right people, but to also better understand the power they do have in the system. So you don't always have to go to someone else for help, but you can also have the ability to choose your own destiny in that way.
Yeah. I mean, I know I have a young nephew who's 21 years old, and I was like, so, are you registered to vote? And he was like, no, and I don't want to talk about it. I just don't see the point. And, he's so outside and so disengaged from anything having to do with politics at that age that it's just so defeating. And I mean, I know we're past the point of voter registration at this juncture. But and he was so like, I don't want to hear about it, that I just felt like I couldn't make an inroad there. Tried, but but couldn't make an inroad there. And so, I mean, it's just how, I know one of the biggest impacts has been, on the youth vote was Taylor Swift finally coming out and endorsing the Kamala Harris ticket. And I noticed I was actually looking at the Florida registration rolls. And I was looking at them and I was like, why are the Democratic, was it such a huge dump of Democratic registered voters? And I was really, really concerned about it. And then I realized that some of the rules have changed. Can you go into that and why the numbers on the website may not align with reality? Yeah.
So it's the distinction between active and inactive voters. So if you don't vote in 2 consecutive federal elections, you're switched into the inactive voter roll, which is not.
You might still be registered as a Democrat or a Republican,
correct,
but you're not showing up as an active voter.
Correct. Now, if you're an active voter, you can still vote. The way you'd activate it is you can call your supervisor elections office and reactivate, but you can also just go vote. If you show up at a polling location, they'll see that you're in the voter file as inactive, and when you cast that ballot, you'll become active. The concern, though, is that eventually you are at risk of getting purged.
Right.
And so it's really important for folks to know their voter registration status. But that number online, it reflects only active voters. And so the gap is not as large as seen, just because so many of those folks that become inactive are going to be younger voters, more transient voters, renters, who move different addresses, folks that are more nomadic in that way. And of course, that tends to capture voters that might have more working class values and so forth. So it definitely is not a representation of the voter file in its entirety. But I think it does speak to voting patterns. It speaks to who's more likely to vote compared to their peers.
Right, absolutely. So, I mean, just a little temp check. What do you think? I mean, the electoral maps, when I turn on the news, usually are showing us as a red state. Every once in a while, it's like a pink state, Do you think there's a chance that we could be turning blue? What is...
Well, I always like to think of Florida as a rainbow state. And so what do I mean by that?
I love that.
What do I mean by that? So Florida is a little bit of everything, and it requires a multicultural, a multiracial, a multi-class coalition to win. It's not by party, it's really by values. And I look at Amendment 4 as an example. Amendment 4 is our efforts to restore reproductive freedom in the Sunshine State. That is a citizen-led ballot initiative that only got to the ballot because everyday voters signed on a petition to say, I want a voice on this. And about 30-some% of those almost million verified signatures were registered Republicans. And so it speaks to how, regardless of what the perception is of partisanship, that our values as Floridians are what connect us. And whether it's $15 minimum wage, rights restoration, environmental conservation. These are maybe sometimes branded as more liberal issues on the spectrum, but at the end of the day, you see bipartisan and nonpartisan support for them. So I often see our fight to be less partisan and more about like the little guy versus the big corporations. And the big corporations are the industrial polluters. They're the folks jacking up our insurance rates, making affordability much more challenging in our state, but they're also major contributors to both political parties, and more so the Republican Party than the Democratic Party, because they're going to give more to whoever is the majority. And then as a result, that dictates the policy setting, whether it is preemption on heat stress protection so that your employer is not required to provide you with water and shade when you work outside, or it's lack of accountability for insurance companies, or it's allowing for there to be, companies like Mosaic get away with flooding their toxic industrial waste into our waterways, or the efforts to develop our springs and develop our state parks into pickleball courts. I mean, these are all...
That OMG,
right.
By the way. And there was a whistleblower who, bless your heart,
yes,
was like, hey, this is going on, and this is wrong. And there was an outrage on, I think it was a pretty nonpartisan outrage.
Oh, it was across the spectrum. I mean, I've never seen so many Republicans, speak out against the DeSantis administration. Now, granted, there's a lot of political tension there too, right? Because DeSantis went against Trump, so a lot of the Trump supporters in the party don't like DeSantis. So there are some, chemistry there that is kind of behind the scenes. But at the end of the day, yeah, the outrage to that was collective, without a doubt.
I was raised by conservatives from the Midwest. And one of the things that, just in, since the rise of Trump, is just watching the Republican Party really splinter and break. And I think it was the backlash to these glass ceilings, Barack Obama reaching the highest office. And then seeing, the backlash to that. So it's just been fascinating to me to see these, conservative people. Conservatives love to conserve nature. They right. There's a lot of different things that are going on in that play there. And so I've just been like, wow, I'm so curious, especially with what has recently happened with the Supreme Court essentially stripping the office of the president of its checks and balances. Oof. We can talk about that, but I was like, okay, we got to address the Electoral College on the other side of this election. And I was like, I wonder if there will be, and I don't know if you have any idea about this, but I was like, it looks like the Republican Party is splitting in two. And now would be the best time to get enough votes to reshape and reform our voting system, maybe to tiered voting or something like that. What are your thoughts? Tell me.
Well, I really do believe firmly the two-party system is just not reflective of our democracy today. Now, with that said, I express caution to folks voting third party at the federal level because I just think the stakes are too high.
Right.
And I do think that if you want to see, more diversity in party, for example, in our state, you start at a local level. Like elect folks that either don't have party affiliation or come from a third party at a local level and kind of build up because the stakes are way too high for, I see folks who are, saying they want to vote third party nationally. And unfortunately, you don't have to go that far back in history to see when that failed us time and time again.
Every time.
Nixon as an example, right? So you have to be critical of the historical
it
dynamics
doesn't.
here.
It does. Yeah, third party. Even though we want more voting rights, we don't have it right now. We have a two-party system, and if you vote third party, chances are the things that you want are not going to be the things that come true, right? And so, but electoral reform from the parties themselves that are shifting, and changing and morphing. I think. Is it Canada that has the tiered voting? I've been a little bit out of it.
So, I mean, ranked voting has been implemented in municipalities across America. Now, unfortunately, the Florida legislature preempted ranked voting. So, I mean, this is, again, why your state legislature is so important. Even if we wanted to pilot ranked voting, let's just say at a municipal level in Florida, we can't because the legislature has preempted it. And so there's actually been a shift to go towards partisan races by national Republican voters because they know that if they make races more partisan, it's easier to divide us versus unite us. And I'll give you an example. On the ballot this year, there is a question to the voters to make our school board races partisan. It's Amendment 1. Question 1 wants to make school board races partisan. And if you're in a blue county, you might say, oh, well, I like that because,
I was actually just thinking, well, I would like to know who I'm voting for.
Right. But if you're in a red county, then it further solidifies it goes both ways, right? It solidifies control for party politics and doesn't allow for just the most decent candidate to really be heard. And we've seen across Florida, moderates become school board members in red counties because, again, people are not voting on a party affiliation. They're voting on what is this person's personal experience. If you're an informed voter, you're going to do that research to know what this person stands for beyond their party affiliation. And so I'm voting. I can't say how I'm voting for the FCC rules, but I'm personally voting no on that amendment, and I encourage voters to do their own research on it.
Which amendment was that?
Amendment 1.
Okay.
Yeah, on the ballot this year. And so, and my reasoning is that I think partisanship makes things worse. And I'm a registered Democrat, but I would love if there were feasible diversity. I mean, when I look at other countries, parties are building coalitions around different issues. Like I had the honor of being a part of the Aspen Institute of Germany a few years ago, focused on climate policy actually. So it was 7 American state lawmakers and 7 German state lawmakers. And it was bipartisan for us and multi-party for them. And just learning more about their political party structure and how there's going to be debates where there's coalitions where the Green Party is working with the Social Democrats and so forth on this issue, and they're going to break apart on other issues. That's so unheard of in our country. Like there's just no coalition building among party. And I feel like if there was more diversity of party, you'd see some of that collaboration more.
Yeah, and I feel like there used to be. I mean, seeing some of these old. It's been a running joke with my friends, and I'm like, man, I miss George W. Bush. We were like, he's a villain,
yes,
and now we're
totally.
like, oh man, he was a puppy dog. But you used to see. I remember I saw a video clip of his father, talking about no, like all of this, demonization of like essentially immigrants. They were like, no, they were, and when Maverick, what was
John McCain.
John McCain.
Yeah.
He had people
saving the Affordable Care Act.
Yeah, I mean, and it was funny to me because I was like, I really thought I call them John McCain Republicans. I really thought I'm throwing my parents under the bus. I thought that they were going to be John McCain Republicans, and I was like Twilight Zoned when they are voting again. My mother even is voting. I'm like, but Mom, what? I don't get it, right. and I don't think I can get it. And so I just love her and respect her from, and we just don't talk politics, I
try to, understand this dynamic. And I do think a part of it is government has failed everyday people. We talked earlier about the baggage of the politician label. I think that there's unfortunately just been decades of disappointment from people to their government, that when you see someone who's branded as the outsider, right? There's an appeal there, there's an attraction there, even though arguably I would say that former President Trump is not an outsider. He is, embedded in the system. He's exploited the system. He profits off it himself, for him and his friends and his cronies. But, for a lot of folks, that's not how they see it. And there's this appeal towards that mentality. And so again, back to like our grassroots approach to politics. I mean, we have won Trump precincts in my district because we're talking to folks. We're knocking on the doors.
Right.
We're also championing issues where we're putting money back in your pocket. You know, one of the bills that I championed is a permanent tax break on children's diapers and adult incontinence products.
I was like,
and
fist in the air
let me
when I
tell
saw
you.
that.
Well, and I fight really hard against corporations. Like, I'm not backed by corporations. I got an F- with the Florida Chamber, proud of
Yay.
it. And, you know, I don't take money from these guys. And like, I mean, I'm like FPL's worst nightmare. You know, I'm willing to call them out, right? And of course, that doesn't come without consequences because that means they target me and I get attacked. You know, the Republican Party has spent about $40,000 attacking me so far with different types of mail, and I'm sure more is coming. But it's that authenticity that allows us to champion these economic policies that honestly a lot of my Democratic colleagues can't. Mm-hmm. And it's sad because you would think that from the reason why I became a Democrat, I was first registered no party affiliation. My parents were Democrats, and
I left my parents' house as a registered Republican.
There we go.
I just want to let you know.
Totally.
I flipped real quick, but I'm just, that's what I was raised in. And,
yeah.
And then, but then as I just started paying attention on my own outside of like Rush Limbaugh, blaring in my dad's, study, like,
wow.
I just was like, oh, what? No, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. And again, as a single mom and an entrepreneur, I've always seen the Democratic Party, not perfect, but it is always been fighting for people more than the other party.
Yeah. Interesting you say that too. One of my old friends that I was college Democrat UCF, she was college Republican. She reached out to me maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago saying that she is just registered to a Democrat. And I was like, wait, what? Like, tell me more. It was very similar. She said that, she grew up Republican and then she went to college and became a mom and realized that the Republican Party does not reflect her values anymore. So you do see, I believe in the power of evolution, but I think we have to play a part in that evolution. That means talking to every voter, not closing off because, this person doesn't 100% align with us. And I try really hard to model that in my day to day, to lead with kindness, to build that trust and relationships. And despite the very, very difficult debates in legislature where we are fighting like hell for our values and for our communities, there are still partnerships that I have. I mean, I couldn't get a tax break for diapers done without working across the aisle. Right. That's the reality of it.
Absolutely.
And so I do think it's important, to build bridges where you can while not being afraid to hold people, party, or corporations accountable when you must. They need to elect people who are willing to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I should remind you guys, you're listening to Front Porch Radio. I'm Julie Weiler. My guest today is Representative Anna Eskamani and Dr. Anna Eskamani.
So getting used to that.
Y'all, she got a doctorate while she was being paid $28,000 a year. And
if you're wondering how I paid for my tuition, I did the UCF payment plan. So UCF lets you break down your payments in two every semester. That's exactly what I did.
Well, I'll tell you what, I bawled tears when my student loans got forgiven.
Oh, totally.
Sobbed and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed.
Totally.
And sobbed because it had been a while.
Wow.
And I had already paid over over what I had borrowed and still had $20,000 sitting there. So anyway, thanks Democrats.
That's great. That's great. What a great story.
So let's get into some of the ballot initiatives here in Florida. Honestly, I have been so disgusted by politics. Because of all the I've tuned out a lot of it. And I have also, with the hurricane, not been paying much attention.
Oh, for sure.
My motivation for rebooting Front Porch Radio after a 5-year hiatus was like, okay, I need to understand what's going on in politics. If I do my radio show again, I'm going to be on top of it. But I
love that.
I hardly even know what's on the ballot initiatives anymore. I
got you covered.
Yeah, let's go through it.
I got you covered. So the Orange County ballot is going to be 4 pages long. And I already voted. I voted by mail, so I mailed in my ballot already. But it's a very long ballot. The reason why is that you have multiple candidates, right, from president to U.S. Senate to congressional to state legislature. We also have county commission seats on the November ballot. You might have a school board seat on your ballot, depending on where you live. So there's a lot of just candidates on your ballot. Then you have 6 constitutional amendments, 2 that are citizen-led, 4 that are placed on the ballot by the legislature. And then you have 10 Orange County charter review amendments. So,
Anna, I have decision fatigue.
I hear you. I feel
overwhelmed just by looking at that. Okay, we're going to go through them, but is there also a place that people, like a good resource that people...
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, first of all, vote411.org is a fantastic nonpartisan resource. It's facilitated by Lincoln voters. So vote411.org. You can go to the website, put in your address. It will actually give you a sample ballot. And for candidates are asked to answer questions in our own words, and they will show you those answers like side by side. That's a great nonpartisan resource. We also have on our website, honor4florida.com/2024 ballot. Again, that's honor4florida.com/2024 ballot. And we have a bunch of resources and also just research tips. I hosted a virtual event last Sunday, actually, before Milton came, going over the ballot and walking folks through how to study your ballot, and that's posted on our website as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll try to find it and cross-post it.
For sure. A lot of great resources. And you're going to be seeing us boost that landing page the next couple of days, because I realized that a lot of folks missed the virtual review that we did due to the hurricane. So we're going to be amplifying it all through the next 22 days. But to the heart of your question, the 6 amendments, probably folks know about Amendments 3 and 4 because there's so many commercials about all of them. And Amendment 3 is recreational cannabis. Amendment 4 is reproductive rights. And both are citizen-led. So citizens collected petitions. Of course, there's paid campaign operations as well, but it's led by that direct democracy approach. And then,
okay, I don't have TV, so I really wish I had seen that recreational marijuana one, because that would have gotten my nephew out to vote.
That's really funny.
Anyway, sorry.
Well, make sure he knows, so at least he feels a sense of responsibility to get out.
Time. Yeah, for next time.
Well, and he can help get out the vote. Even if you can't vote, you can help get it out. Right, but yeah, no, recreational cannabis is Amendment 3, and then Amendment 4, as I said, is abortion rights. Amendments 1, 2, 5, 6 are placed by the legislature. Mm-hmm. So those are very politically motivated. Like I said, one of them is partisan school board races. The other is a right to fish and hunt, which is very concerning for environmentalists. And then you have public campaign financing. And then, actually, that's number 6. Number 5 is around property tax exemptions. And number 5 sounds really good on paper. It basically says it will adjust property taxes to inflation. But honestly, based on the Revenue Estimating Conference, a consumer would only save maybe $25 on their property insurance, but the cost of local government is in the millions, which impacts police, fire, and other types of essential government services, which it could lead to taxes being shifted towards renters and other types of residents.
I'm so glad I have you on this program, because I would have been like, yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah. Well, remember, when it comes to constitutional ballot initiatives for the state, it does require 60% to pass. So none of this is easy. 60% is a very difficult threshold to reach.
Right.
And then you have the 10 county amendments, and I honestly am not going to remember all 10.
I'm impressed you don't have a sheet of paper in front of you and you've been doing all of this off the top of your head. That's incredible. So,
well, I definitely live and breathe it a lot, but the 10, just so you have the context for the Orange County Charter. So Orange County government is managed by a charter, just like how the state has a state constitution and the U.S. has a U.S. constitution. We have a charter. So the 10 questions before the voters were placed by a citizen review board that crafted questions to make changes to our charter. And it does include some really thoughtful proposals, including creating an affordable housing trust fund, creating a rural boundary to protect the environment, different changes when it comes to just growth management. So definitely encourage folks to research those 10 charter review amendment questions. I'll be voting yes on all 10. But I encourage you to do your own research to figure out how you want to vote.
Okay, I'm gonna try to. I'm gonna commit to doing a show just on the county.
Oh, you should.
It's like I don't want to, but I must.
Yeah. Well, and it's so wonky. Like, it was really funny because when I did my virtual review on October 6th. Yeah, October 6th. It was last Sunday. I opened up my ballot on the Zoom on the camera, and I was like, all right, let's go through it. And then I was like, we're gonna read each one, because I know it feels like it's complicated, but if we read it together, it'll be fine. And one of my girlfriends texted me and she was like, Yeah, even though you read it, I was still confused. I was like, oh my God, I know. It's a lot of words. Right. But I mean, I really do encourage folks. Sometimes we feel hesitation to even try because we think we think that the text is going to be too complicated. It's going to be in like Old English or something. But if you just try to read it, I think you'll be really impressed by your own capacity to process.
Okay. I like that. Thank you for that encouragement.
I got you.
Okay. So, have we covered, am I interrupting or is there more on those issues?
No, I think that's great. Okay. Yeah. I think that's, there's also the penny sales tax for schools.
Okay.
So that is not a new penny. It's keeping the current penny. So as you might know, in Orange County, we have a half cent sales tax. When you buy something, it's half a penny that goes to schools. So this is to keep it so it doesn't go away. So
it's not increasing anything. It's just maintaining the status quo.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's really important to funding public schools.
Okay. Heard, noted. Have a teenager in public school.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, that's really great. Okay, let's switch gears just a second. Oh, we only have a few minutes left. Okay, so you are literally a glass ceiling breaking, female politician, person of color, breaking glass ceilings everywhere. Here we have an election that could break the tallest glass ceiling in America. How are you feeling? Like, what's the mood?
Anxious? I feel like for a lot of women, it's just kind of like a redo. Mm-hmm. Because I remember in 2016 how many of the women in my life just felt so confident that the glass ceiling would be struck that night.
I was not one of those women, by the way.
Really?
No, I saw Trump and Hillary, and I was just going through a personal relationship situation that was similar. And I said, oh, people love a strong papa that is going to tell them what to do or do it for them. And she's out there being like, we're going to work together, and I was just like, I think he's going to win. I had a pit in my stomach.
Yeah.
I do not have that same feeling right now. Before Biden, handed the baton over, I was biting my nails.
Oh, for sure.
And just this incredible upsweep of, like, it was like a football game, right? It was like we're in the fourth quarter, and it's like, oh, no, and then and now there's like, the black women are rallying, and then the white women are rallying, and then the white dudes were rallying, and now we've got the Christians for Harris, and then she picked Tim Walz, and I was like, ooh, maybe this will really reach out to my Midwestern mom.
Totally.
It's been wild for me.
Totally. Well, and we saw the energy on college campuses. So we've been doing voter registration at UCF and multiple campuses across the state, and the energy was pretty below average. And then the second we saw that shift, it was just students were coming to us asking for help getting registered to vote. Seeing increase in just overall civic engagement. And we're actually hosting an event at UCF on Wednesday of this week with Congressman Maxwell Frost to help students navigate their ballot and learn about their ballot. And so it's definitely a complete 180 of just the temperature on the ground. Now, with that said, you don't win by luck. You don't win by good vibes. You don't win by even the best candidates. You win by doing the work.
Right.
So we are doing the work. We obviously canceled our political events this past week to respond to Hurricane Milton. And it's, like I said, we've been doing debris pickup. We've been helping community members navigate through this. But turning the machine back on, if you will, to do both at the same time. So as we respond back to Hurricane Milton, we're also going to be knocking on doors, reaching out to voters, make sure they turn their vote by mail ballot. We're doing everything. We just can't stop.
What are some of the things that you have seen be the most impactful that a regular person can do to help turn out the vote?
Definitely talking to your neighbors and your loved ones. I mean, end of the day, peer-to-peer relational organizing is key because you are that influencer in their life. And so talking to your neighbors about it, and if you work with a campaign, we'll give you a list of your neighbors. Like, we'll help you do that in the most efficient way possible. And we have so many events. Oh my gosh, like multiple days a week. We're like at the doors, or we're calling folks or texting folks. So postcard writing, like our team is hustling. And so at the end of the day, that neighbor to neighbor contact, meeting folks belly to belly, it's always be the best way to get out the vote.
Right on. Okay, so that leads me to my final question with 1 minute left. How I've considered getting into politics, but I'm like, all right, how do you do it? Like, how do you? Is there a group that you go to and say, hey, I want to run, and you'll help me figure things out?
There actually are organizations, like, for example, Rootsless Florida is a group that helps women that support abortion rights run for office. But at the end of the day, the best thing you can do is volunteer on a campaign because you have to see if you like it.
I think she's trying to reel me in.
Yes! Come volunteer. I just gave you like the entire load on what we're doing.
My little sister has volunteered with you.
She has. She's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I know Max has indicated they want to come and intern. And I was like, okay, I guess I will make it my 5th job.
Come join us.
To come and hang out with you.
But I think that exposure, because you're gonna get an idea, and this applies to everyone, but when I decided to run for office, I had volunteered on so many other campaigns. I knew what I liked and didn't like, but I also knew what it took. Because a lot of folks don't have that understanding. They think it's just, I'll create an Instagram account and that's how I'll get out the vote. And it's
strategy.
Strategy, but honestly raising money because you need resources to communicate to voters. And you have to, it's a math game. You have to have a win number. There's all these different dynamics that folks kind of take for granted. But when you have exposure to being on a campaign, you kind of see if you like or don't like it, and what role would you want to play, in public service? What seat speaks to you, right? And so, the best way to start those is to just get involved.
Okay. Thank you so much. We are out of time. I could talk to you forever on the Front Porch Radio. I'm Julie Wilder. Thank you so much, Representative Dr. I love saying that. Dr. Anna Eskamani, you have just been an incredible force for our community, and you're so easy to talk to. It's hard for me to not call you Anna because that's how I met you.
You can totally call me Anna.
But you deserve to be called by your title. And thank you so much. Everybody stay tuned. We've got more amazing shows here on WPRK. Thank you. This, I'm sure, will not be the last time you'll be on Front Porch Radio.
Oh, absolutely. I can't wait to come back. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.